Hello and welcome to episode 40 of the Mr. Douglas Sports Show. I'm your host as always, Corey Douglas. And on today's episode, we are going to dive into a busy week in the world of sports. We got NFL free agency, we got the NBA second half tipped off, we got March Madness being back this year, every game being held in Indianapolis. But I want to get started right off the bat with NFL free agency. I'm going to talk Cowboys and what they are doing or not doing. I'm going to talk winners and losers because I think there's a big loser and I think there's 4 big winners in the NFL. So I want to go ahead and get things started with the biggest winners so far in NFL free agency. And I want to start this, like I said, I think there's 4 teams. My first team has to be the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And it's not for them going out and getting a splashy pickup in free agency, but it's about them keeping the band together. They made it their priority this offseason to make sure they brought mostly the same or as many guys as they could bring back that was on the Super Bowl champion team, and they are off to a great start with that. Of course, you have to start with at the top with Tom Brady restructuring his contract, frees up a little room. Then you also go to Chris Godwin, you franchise tag him. He actually signed the franchise tender already. They still have until July 15th to work out a long-term agreement on that, but that's locked in. You signed Levante David, linebacker, who made some critical plays during the entire postseason run and including the Super Bowl. Then you have Shaq Barrett, who actually stayed in Tampa Bay, took less money. You keep Rob Gronkowski in the tight end room. So I really like what they're doing, keeping the band together. Second up, I have to go to the Arizona Cardinals. And I like the Arizona Cardinals move so much because they are doing what you should do when you have a rookie quarterback under his rookie contract. So obviously the quarterback is Kyler Murray. You go out and sign J.J. Watt. You go out and sign A.J. Green, who I'm not sure how much he has left in the tank at receiver, but you add another weapon for him. But then I think my favorite move for them so far is going out and shoring up the offensive line, making sure Kyler is protected. Because I watched many Cardinals games last year, and Kyler Murray was running all over the field. He was running 15 yards backwards because he wasn't being protected. So they go out and get Rodney Hudson from the Raiders. And then they shored up their special teams. They had kicker issues for the majority of last season. They go out and get Matt Prater from Detroit. And he's been around this business for a long time, so I like that pickup. Next team up is I have the New England Patriots. And this screams like Bill Belichick. He got pissed off this offseason. He saw Tom Brady win his 7th Super Bowl. He saw his team go 7-9. So he went out and he went shopping. So you start on the offensive side of the ball. They keep Cam Newton. I think the biggest knock on New England from this past season was that they did not give Cam Newton enough resources and help on offense. But they did that this year. So you keep him. We'll see if that works out. They go out and get receivers, Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne. I think they're both solid players, but nothing splashy. You go out and trade for Trent Brown from the Raiders on the offensive line, so shore up the protection. Then you go out, Bill Belichick's favorite sets are the 2 tight end sets. He goes out and grabs the 2 best tight ends on the market. He go out and get Hunter Henry. If he can stay healthy, that's a big weapon. Jonnu Smith, he wasn't used correctly in Tennessee. So giving Cam weapons, I think, is going to go a long way into improving the New England Patriots 7-9 record from last season. So I like what they're doing over there. And then on defense, you got Jalen Mills. They pick him up from Philadelphia. And I know Mills is definitely excited to get away from the NFC East because he will no longer have to take on the Cowboys receivers twice a year. Specifically, Amari Cooper gave him fits. Then you go out and get Matthew Judon from Baltimore, linebacker / defensive end. So I like the pickups there. And of course, they have a whole slew of guys coming back that sat out due to COVID from last season. So I think the Patriots are going to be right back in the playoff contention. And as it sits today, I would be surprised if they did not get in the playoffs. Then you go to my last team that I like what they've done in the first 3 days of free agency is the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I think a lot of people might forget that Jacksonville was in the AFC Championship game just 3 years ago in 2018. Now, a lot of those guys are not there, like Jalen Ramsey, and the list can go on. But they were just in the AFC Championship 3 years ago. Like I said, it's a new slate. They got Urban Meyer in there. They got the #1 pick in the draft, which is expected to be Trevor Lawrence. And what they've done so far in free agency is they've gone out and got Marvin Jones at receiver. They signed Shaquille Griffin from Seattle in the secondary. And they went out and got Rayshon Jenkins from the Chargers at safety. And like I said, they have a rookie quarterback coming in. They have plenty of cap space. And I don't think they're done yet. So I would expect Jacksonville to keep on adding weapons, especially on offense, and making sure that defense is solid enough to carry or help build around the rookie quarterback. And another thing I like about Jacksonville is they are in a very winnable division. When you look at who's in the division, you have the Houston Texans, who are in shambles at this point. Deshaun Watson probably will not be there. You have the Indianapolis Colts, who a lot of people expect to return to the playoffs with Carson Wentz. But I'm not so sure about that yet. We have to see what Carson Wentz is. And I'm not convinced that he's just going to magically get back to 2017 Carson Wentz in Indy. Then you have the Tennessee Titans, who have lost Corey Davis. They've lost Jonnu Smith. So they've lost some pieces on that offense. We'll see kind of how they rebuild on that side of the ball. But like I said, I like what Jacksonville's doing, and I think they could, be really improved this upcoming season. All right, so to transition from my biggest winners to my biggest loser, and I think there's a couple of teams in consideration from here, but I'm going to stick with the one biggest loser, and that biggest loser to me is the Chicago Bears. Now, when you look at the Chicago Bears history throughout, going all the way back to, the 85 Bears, the one consistent thing with the Chicago Bears is they have not had a quarterback. I mean, you go from Mitchell Trubisky to Nick Foles to Rex Grossman, and the line goes on and on and on. So this offseason, they made a run at Russell Wilson. So what that run looked like for Russell Wilson is, according to reports, the Bears offered 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and 2 starting caliber players to Seattle in return for Russell Wilson. Of course, Seattle declined that trade, and I can't really blame them for that, because when you look at the first-round picks that are going to be included, you look at this year's pick, which is 20 for the Bears, because the Bears made the playoffs. And then if you throw into consideration the next 2 years, Russell Wilson on the Bears is probably going to make the playoffs. So you're looking at a couple more first-round picks that are going to be in the 20s to maybe late 30s if the Bears win the Super Bowl under Russell Wilson. So I don't blame Seattle for not taking that trade. And then on the flip side, Seattle's also trying to make it work with Russell Wilson. I think at this point, although I don't think it's going to end up well, I think either Russell Wilson's going to be traded this offseason or at the very latest next offseason. So the Bears, they're my biggest loser because they had to settle for another washed up Andy Dalton type quarterback. They signed Andy Dalton for a 1-year contract, $10 million. And I watched Andy Dalton enough last season where I don't ever want to watch Andy Dalton play football again. So when you go from going after the likes of Russell Wilson down to Andy Dalton, you are by far my biggest loser. So from one biggest loser to another team I think you could throw in consideration of the biggest losers so far in the offseason, and that is the Dallas Cowboys. So now obviously I've said numerous times before that I hate Stephen Jones' approach in free agency. His approach is he wants to overpay his own players rather than kind of go out there and shop at the top of the market in free agency, which to a certain degree, that's a smart strategy, but every free agent acquisition that you get cannot be at the bottom of the barrel. We've gone down this path so many times over the last few years, and it has not paid off. And I'm not saying go out and spend $100 million on, this free agent and that free agent and all the free agents, because obviously the Cowboys don't have cap room for that. But I think there's a smart way to go about it without, like I said, going to the bottom of the barrel in free agency. So far what the Cowboys have done is they've cut long snapper LP Ladouceur. They've cut longtime punter Chris Jones. And they've lost Chidobe Awuzie to Cincinnati. And they've re-signed Jordan Lewis. And they've re-signed special teamer CJ Goodwin, which I think is a great pickup for the special teams. But overall, the Cowboys, I hate the Cowboys' approach. But there are some free agents that aren't at the bottom of the barrel that I would like to see the Cowboys go with or go after. So out of the best remaining free agents, there's names like Richard Sherman out there. I would love to have his veteran presence around Trevon Diggs, because the Cowboys, they're going to have a young secondary, because right now as it currently sits, they have Trevon Diggs, they have Anthony Brown, and Jordan Lewis. It's a young secondary, so I would love to have Richard Sherman's brain in that room to really teach these guys, especially in the terms of Diggs. And he's played with Dan Quinn before in Seattle, obviously. Another guy from Seattle is KJ Wright. I would love to add him at the linebacker position, because with Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch, I think there is a lot of room for improvement there. Safety Anthony Harris from Minnesota. The Cowboys have needs at safety as well. And then my last free agent that I would like the Cowboys to at least go after is Kanu Neal. Now, there's been reports that they have contacted Kanu Neal. Obviously, he played with Dan Quinn in Atlanta. He's been injured a couple of times throughout his career, so there's some question marks there, but that's another name that could be enticing for the Cowboys to go after, and that is still available. And before I get to the NBA, I'm going to go through, I'm just going to make sure nothing's come out just, in the last few minutes as far as NFL goes. I'm scrolling here. Let's see. Okay, so Jerry Cook just signed with the Chargers. So that Justin Herbert gets his replacement tight end. And it looks like that is all that is going on at the moment. So I think I am safe to go ahead and move on to the NBA. All right, so I'm going to spend the majority of this time as far as the NBA talking about the Dallas Mavericks. Right now, they currently sit 21-18. They are the eighth seed right now in the Western Conference. They are 2 games behind the 6th seed Portland Trailblazers, who they have 2 straight games with starting tonight and then Sunday night. If they can get both of those games, they win the season series against Portland, which is going to be critical. And this season, the 6th seed is very, very important to get, because the top 6 seeds in each conference are protected. They are going to make the real playoffs. However, if you are the 7th or 8th seed, 9th or 10th seed, you are going to be in a battle to still make the playoffs. Now, the way this is going to shake out is the 7th and 8th seed are going to play a game. The winner of that game will be the 7th seed. The 9th and 10th seeds are going to play a game. The winner of that game will compete with the loser of the 7-8 game for the 8th spot. So basically what that means is the Mavericks cannot really afford to throw games away. So obviously they've played 5 games so far in the second half. They are 3-2 in those 5 games. Their wins have come against San Antonio, Denver, and the Clippers. And the losses came against OKC and the Clippers. But what I really want to talk about is this game against the OKC Thunder that they just basically threw away by resting KP and Luka on the same night. So I want to start by saying I understand why you're resting KP on the second night of a back-to-back with his injury history, and because the Mavericks have 9 upcoming back-to-backs this season, with a bunch of them coming in the month of April. So I understand that one. But Luka is 22 years old and should not be having to rest unless he is actually really hurt. So that's the number one problem I have, is just resting Luke and KP on the same night. My second issue with that is, if you are going to throw games in the second half of the season, you have 3 rookies over here who have barely got any run. And I'm talking Josh Green, who was a first-round pick. You're talking about Tyler Bay, who really played really well in the G League. I'm not really big on G League results, just because I'm not really sure how that transfers. In some cases it does, other cases does not. But then you have Tyrell Terry, who also played pretty well in the G League bubble. So if you are going to sit your 2 best players, why are you not taking the approach of, I'm going to get these young guys 30 plus minutes. We're probably going to lose the game anyway. just go out there and play your rookies, and at least you're developing something. At least you can take something from them. At least as a fan, I have something to take from this game where, okay, well, you know, maybe Green flashed in certain areas. Maybe we found out Tyler Bay could be an actual contributor. Because when you look up and down the Mavericks roster right now, you have 3 guys in the starting lineup that can't even hardly dribble a basketball. You have Finney Smith and Maxi Kleber, who anytime they get the ball and it's not a wide open catch and shoot situation, they are terrified. Then you have Josh Richardson, who I really like what he's been doing, you know, since the All-Star break. He had a really huge influence defensively against the Clippers on Wednesday night. But yeah, that's just what I have as far as the Mavericks, just with their arrogance. But other than that, I mean, the Mavericks, I mean, they're in a decent position. If they can somehow find a way to win both of these games against Portland, I would feel really good going forward with, you know, how this team is shaking out. Now, the trade deadline is next week, next Thursday. And I want the Mavs to go out there and try to make an acquisition, because this team is currently constructed, I don't think is winning a playoff series. I think the most realistic option for the Mavericks to go out and grab is a guy like JJ Redick. He adds shooting to this team on a team that is so dead set on shooting threes, even though they were, for the majority of the season, the worst in the league. It has since improved just slightly a little bit, but you can never have too much shooting on this team, and I think JJ Redick playing alongside Luka would be a dream. But I think that is all I have for today's episode. Let me just run down one more quick check, and let's see if anything's going on. Alright, so in the world of the NFL, Kenyon Drake signs a 2-year, $11 million deal with the Las Vegas Raiders. But yeah, that's all. There's no more news out there right now. That's been episode 40 of the Mr. Douglass Sports Show. I will be back next week to react to the NBA trade deadline and see what's going on with March Madness and how my bracket is doing. But until next time, salute.